My world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am what I am.
Today we welcome back a long-standing friend all the way from Dundalk, which is Bernie Quinn from Outcomers. So Bernie, welcome back to LGBTQ+life.
How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah. Bernie, you and I, we first crossed paths, but it must be nearly 10 years ago. Well, it's about 8 years ago at an event organised by an organisation I'm very sad to say is no longer with us, which was Glenn. And it was an event called Outing and Exclusion. And by and large, until I heard both yourself and a mutual friend, Hayley Fox-Roberts, I had really saw LGBT as Dublin focused. And then when you came on and you were talking about Outcomers and Hayley talked about the situation in Leitrim, it changed my perspective completely, because I realized we really do have to get out there and see the other communities. And that's why I'm delighted to welcome you as our guest today.
Thank you so much. Yes, I remember the Outing and Exclusion conference very well. It was great. It was a great setup. And I suppose it's very true that like everything from outside Dublin, everything seems very Dublin centric. Mm-hmm. All the social life, all the news life and that, and all seem to always happen in Dublin. But we have been working away in our own wee silos. Well, Outcomers has been here for 23 years. Mm-hmm. We're going on 24 years. And that's how long our building has been open. But we've been active here since the early 90s, mid-90s, after 93, I suppose. Yep. So, yeah, so we've all been working away in our own wee silos around the country, I suppose.
And not only that, I mean, you're one of Dundalk is one of many, and I gather very recently, in the last couple of years, you opened an Outcomers in Drogheda as well. So clearly, not only is there a need, but there is a demand as well for your services.
Well, what we did with Outcomers in Drogheda was that we loan our name to a group of what I call them Outcomers gabies, young people who used Outcomers back in the day, who are trying to set up similar supports in Drogheda. So they wanted to call themselves Outcomers Drogheda. And so we were delighted to be associated with that. But it's a group of young original service users from here, mm-hmm. and people who attended discos that we ran back in the 90s in Drogheda, in the West Court Hotel in Drogheda. We used to have great discos there. And so it's a lot of those young people have now come of age and want to give back to the community. At the same time, Dundalk Outcomers were getting lots and lots of calls from people in Drogheda saying, you know, there's nothing here. We have no supports. And so we come together, put our heads together, and these guys are going, we want to offer the same supports. So they only kind of got off the ground when COVID hit, but they were having peer support group meetings. And now they're doing them on Zoom, but hopefully soon we'll be all able to go back into rooms with people and have proper peer-to-peer support. But for the minute, they're still running little events online and a book club and stuff like this that is encouraging other LGBT people from the locality to come on and chat.
Yeah. I remember the first time I spoke to somebody from your part of the world, County Louth, and that was another mutual friend, Paula Fagan. And Paula I had as a guest before they even established LGBT Ireland. And she was telling me about growing up in a country town and realizing or imagining that you were LGBT and then trying to find information. And she, you know, this was pre-internet days and all of that, and how even the libraries weren't the source of information that we would expect it to be. What was your experience on a personal level of growing up in a similar environment, Bernie?
Yeah, I think probably you're right, very similar to Paula's. I think it's very hard for young people to understand now where information is so readily available.
Mm-hmm.
How very, very rare it was to see the word lesbian, gay, bisexual. I don't think I've ever heard transgender until more modern times, but how rare it was to see our names anywhere in print. But I remember finding an advertisement in the back of the Sunday World for Lesbian Line.
Okay.
For Lesbian Line, way back. It might have been, it was well pre-decriminalisation. It was maybe early 80s. And I remember phoning Lesbian Line and the girl on the other end of the phone saying, hello, Lesbian Line, and I hung up. And that was the first time I'd ever heard the word. But interestingly enough, I knew when I read the personal ad in the Sunday World that it meant me. I don't know how I knew it meant me. I don't know how I made that connection, but I knew that that's who they were talking about. It was me. And so I took the piece of paper and I put it away for a while. And then eventually I called the number and then hung up. But I called it back a few weeks later. And then two girls from Lesbian Line met me in Dublin on a Saturday at 6 o'clock outside the stairs. Opposite Trinity College, and I went and I met them there, and I left Dundalk at 9 o'clock that morning to meet them at 6. I'd never been to Dublin on my own. I didn't know how long it was going to take to get there. I didn't know how I was going to find books upstairs. I went completely blind on the bus. And in those days, like 40 minutes now, and you're at Dublin Airport from Dundalk. Those days, that bus took 2.5 hours to get to Dublin.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
And so it was through every small town. And I remember arriving and the two women meeting me and taking me to a meeting. And we went, and in that room, there was about 10, 15 other lesbian women. And we were all just like deers in the headlight, kind of going, wow. And we had a bit of social time and a chat. And then I went back home, and my head, I can't even explain the stuff that was in my head. I'd gone from having never, ever seen anybody who was lesbian, never met anybody who was lesbian before. Had my suspicions about people around town, you know, more maybe masculine women who lived around the town. Is she? But again, I didn't know what that was, but I knew that there was some kind of connection there. And so then I remembered coming home on the bus that night and thinking, wouldn't it be great if we could have them meetings in Dundalk?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Can I just speculate here, Bernie? I'm guessing that your immediate response when you got back to Dundalk was, I'm not going to immediately go to my friends and neighbours and family and say, guess what? That while the liberation may have been personal, it didn't permeate into sharing it with the wider community.
It didn't. No, it didn't. But I remembered telling, I played football for a factory that I worked in, and I remember telling the girls on the bus going somewhere to a football match that I liked girls, and it was met with hilarity. Yeah. And I remember at the time knowing that I felt okay saying that, but it wasn't okay to say it. The reaction reinforced that, and I probably didn't say it for a long, long time after that again.
Yeah. What period are we talking here, Bernie? Are we talking the 90s?
No, that would have been, I know now I'm very young looking, but that would have been the 80s probably.
Okay.
Yeah, like 91, I was out of the factory. So what it was, I'd say late 80s, maybe.
Okay, yeah, but by that stage we had the killing of Sister George. It wasn't uncommon in the cinema, but I suspect that you weren't getting it on RTE. You really weren't even getting it on the BBC per se, except maybe a panorama documentary or something like that. It was.
You probably weren't getting it in the Magnet Cinema in Dundalk.
But I also suspect that, like Paula's experience, if you were to go down to the main library in Dundalk, you would have been hard pushed to find The Well of Loneliness or any of the other lesbian classic novels.
Mick, I wouldn't have even come from a background where a book would have ever even been something
mentioned. Yeah.
And I think some of the things that drive me now is that I didn't have a great education. By my, I left school before I did my intershare. And when I was there, I was a pain in everybody's arse, including my own, and every teacher there. And I was absolutely given up as a lost cause. Went back 35 years later and got a degree. However,
congratulations.
While I was there, I couldn't spell, and I couldn't, I wasn't the brightest button in the box, I would say. Definitely not. So literature and stuff like that wouldn't even have been in, like, I know when I first found LGBT information was that day that I went to Dublin, I was given a GCN. And there was a place on it you could write on the back, you could send away for it to come in a brown envelope to your house. And I remember that because the only other place I had ever seen LGBT stuff mentioned was at the time in Hot Press. You might see personal ads usually men, but you might see personal ads that talked about LGBT or something like that. And it wasn't LGBT, it was gay and lesbian, I think, really. It wasn't really LGBT. And so then a whole new world opened up for us when I got GCN. Then I saw books you could read. Then I saw, things. But again, you had to, like, I remember the two nuns appearing on the Late Late Show, breaking silence, the lesbian nuns that wrote the book on convent sexuality. And there was protests outside the Late Late Show. But I remember going up to Eason's to try and get that book. And the woman said, I said, could I have a copy of the book, Breaking Silence? And she was looking at me and she was, and I said, they were on the Late Late Show. And she said, oh, that's banned. That book is banned.
Oh, you're joking. Yeah.
I was standing in, because I just thought it wasn't in a local bookshop, but surely it would be in Dublin in a bookshop or something like that. But it wasn't. It was banned at the time. And sure, Gay Byrne was ridiculed and protests outside the RT studios the night that they appeared. And so, like, a world opened up for us when I got my hands on JCN, because I got to read information about elderly people, and I got to see links and stuff to books I could buy or programs we could watch or stuff like that. So that was the world opening up, the gay world opening up for me then.
Yeah. Something that I always say to people is that what I greatly admire about people of your and my generation as well, some are intelligent, some are beautiful, some are this, that, but almost every one of them was courageous. And that's a character I just find so attractive per se. I suspect you probably didn't get to see, or maybe it didn't come into your radar at the time when Joni Crow appeared on the Late Late Show. And I've since watched it. I've had the privilege of meeting Joni, and you think to yourself, what an unbelievable woman, and how appallingly she was treated as a result of simply saying, "This is who I am." Did you see that at the time, Bernie?
At the time, I didn't see it, Mick, here, but I later did a workshop with Bernie Quinn and met her and thought, wow. And I think I remember her saying that she was working in an office building at the time, and her boss called her into the office and she thought, this is it, I'm gone. And he said, I saw you the other night, and if anybody gives you any trouble in here, let me know.
Yeah.
Of another person is phenomenal. You just cannot, that cannot be understated.
Yeah.
She said she walked out of that office feeling so relieved.
Yeah. Well, when I saw that, because I wasn't in Ireland at the time, but when I saw that, I thought, this is one of the reasons why I left Ireland, because the audience response, and I've never forgiven Gay Byrne for it, I'll be perfectly honest, when he said, what would your mother think? It was none of her business, but that was the Ireland we grew up in, Bernie.
What you have to remember, Mick, when Anne-Louise Gilligan and Catherine Zappone appeared on the Late Late Show many years after that, and they were talking about their marriage, a woman in the audience said, "How dare you think you deserve the same as me, as a heterosexual?"
I know.
How dare you?
Yeah.
But like we had our own antagonists in Louth at the time, because if you remember Brendan McGahan, the Fine Gael PD from Louth, oh my God. Sure, he said on the Late Late Show we should all be put on an island and burned.
Yeah. And yes, I'm not being disparaging of Louth, you probably had more killers walking around there at the time because of the troubles, So what can I say, Bernie? But look, I want to move on because just to let people know, what does Outcomers do, and who are your services focused on and aimed at?
Okay, so Outcomers is a very rare thing in Ireland, and it is an LGBT community centre. So we have our own building that is totally dedicated to the support of lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, intersex, queer people.
Yeah.
We run, let's talk like pre-COVID for a moment and say we ran peer-to-peer support groups for gay men, for lesbian women, for and in age differences, older women, young adults, and young people under the age of 18, and 18 to 30, and then 30 plus, for men and women. And we run trans coffee morning for trans and non-binary people. And so those are the services we run in-house. We provide training, information sessions, and all sorts of external supports, going into companies, going into schools, I talk to GPs, to the Garda Síochána about LGBT rights and about how to support LGBT communities, I suppose, and LGBT people. So we offer kind of services for the LGBT people and on behalf of the LGBT people to the wider community.
Sure.
And we're kind of a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
If you come in here with an issue that affects your sexual orientation or gender identity, we try our best to get you linked in with the proper supports or provide the supports that we can ourselves for you.
Sure. Yeah. I've noticed one of the groups you've got is called Outcomers Youth. Now, people would say, well, you've got belong to, or if you've got, if you had trans people or people who considered they might be trans in Dundalk, in the past, you might have referred to them to Tenny or something like that. How important do you think it is for people to get that information locally and be able to relate to local people rather than have to go to some centralized service?
Well, I'll tell you two things about this, Mick. And one is that I remember that journey to Dublin that day and the knot in my stomach.
Yeah.
And the knot in my stomach until I arrived back home in my hometown. And that was getting the 12 o'clock bus from Busaris that night. And getting back into Dundalk at whatever time I got back to Dundalk, very late anyway. And I remember the knot in my stomach, and I remember thinking that I shouldn't have to go to Dublin.
Sure.
Why can I not see lesbians in Dundalk? Why are they not here for me to be with here in Dundalk? And years later, in the 90s, I was involved in the trade union movement, and I was a senior shop steward with the AWU at the time. And we did a European conference and a European exchange, and we were in Copenhagen, and we were sitting in a room having a conversation, and I was asked, where did I see myself in 15 years? And when I looked out the window, on the opposite side of the road, there was a building with a red neon light that said gay and an arrow pointing at the stairs. And they said, where do you see yourself in 15 years? And I said, having one of those in the town that I was born in.
Yeah.
Now, I also saw a report a couple of years ago about LGBT people saying that it was unnecessary to provide supports for them, because usually what happened was when they left school, they went to Dublin or they went to America or they went to Australia. And I thought, hold on here a minute. They don't, and neither should they have to.
Sure.
There's
Yeah.
there's a certain cohort can afford to go to Dublin or can afford to go to London, but for everyone that can afford to go away, there are 5 that can't.
Yeah.
And we need to provide services locally. And how do we broaden the minds of people in our community if we're shipping our community to another community?
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. Look.
For me, I think it's so important that we
Yeah.
have visibility in this community for LGBT people to see themselves and for other people to see that LGBT people live in this town and are in this community.
Yeah, yeah, no, music to my ears, Bernie, because I often find that people assume LGBTQ is bourgeois, middle class. You know, you've got an education, you can get on a plane, you've got the money for a plane ticket. What you've spoken about is probably the vast majority of LGBTQ plus people, and like migrants. People want to live their lives where they grew up, with people they're familiar with, and I think it's incredibly important for people like yourself to say that and get that message out there. Mm-hmm.
It's so important, Mick, that we grow our organic communities in our communities, because that's what enriches our small towns around Ireland. Is that when a tourist comes to Ireland, that they don't think, I'm a gay tourist and the only place I can be at home is in Dublin.
Yeah.
No. It should be a case that a gay couple coming and eating in a restaurant in Dundalk is as welcome, eating in a restaurant in Leitrim where Hayley was doing her stuff, in Killarney, wherever it is that we're going. They're not just tourists, they're LGBT tourists, and they should be welcomed exactly the same as we would welcome all other tourists.
Sure, yeah. Just before we move on to talking about Proud and Loud and Dundalk Pride, I gather your website is down for reconstruction or for extension at the moment. When can we expect that to be coming back?
Okay, well, what happened was, yes, we took our website down about 3 weeks ago to start to enhance it and upgrade it and photographs of ourselves. Nobody's seen me in years, so I had to get a photograph of myself on the website. And what we found out that our operating system was old. And so they had to design a new one for us, which they have done, and it went to the web developer yesterday, the new operating system. So hopefully within a couple of days, we'll be back up all shiny and new, hopefully. And we've lots of things anyway to update on it. And one that you spoke about there is Proud and Loud. So usually Pride in Dundalk is a very family orientated event. We have a lovely courtyard here at the front of our building. And what we do is we would turn that into a little artisan cafe with home-baked goods and a stage. And we would invite all LGBT people to bring their family members and so on around. And we'd have music for the day, and usually just a lovely, cool meeting space with great music in the background, lovely food, coffee, burgers, and the whole lot. So we do that on the Saturday, usually the weekend of the 12th of July. We do that on the Saturday for a public pride. And on Friday, we have it for young LGBT people under the age of 18. We have a pride, a Northeast Pride. So we invite young people from Loudmead, Cavan and Monaghan who are LGBT, who youth services bring them. And the last one we had in person with 126 young LGBT.
That's pretty good. Well done.
The only under 18s pride in the country, and we've been running it for 6 years now. And we just do workshops. We did, art workshops. We did makeup workshops. We had magicians. The whole 9 yards for the kids for one whole day, and then the next day we do it for family. So we've done that. The adult one has happened for. This would have been 14 years. I think this year would have been 14 years of the adult one and 6 of the younger kids one. And unfortunately, as we all know, COVID has taken that away from us 2 years now on the trot. So this year, we had this great idea that what I was thinking was, when we do Pride, we decorate the streets with, festoon them with flags and rainbow balloons, and you would know, you could see us. You knew there was something going on here that was rainbow. And so for the last 2 years, we haven't done that. So this year we said, let's have a Pride, an LGBT visibility event, and we call it Proud and Loud. And what we would do is we would provide every shop, every business, and some homes who have requested rainbow flags for their windows.
Excellent, excellent.
The idea of that is that we see ourselves represented in the rainbow flag. So if you're just coming out, or if you're not out yet, and you walk up the streets of Dundalk, you go, wow, they're here. There's LGBT people here, because look at all these, the businesses responded amazingly. There's flags in loads and loads of businesses and in very visible spots around the town. On the top of the town hall, thanks to Louth County Council, where it goes most years, but we had a health and safety issue for a couple and it didn't go, but it's back this year, the rainbow flag flying on top of the most important building in our town. We have rainbow flags in most of the businesses on the main street. It looks amazing. And it's, if you are an older LGBT person who never had these experiences, like I'm about to hit my 60s very soon.
You're only a girl, Bernie.
When I look at it, I think they're wrong. I think I was born 15 years later than what they're saying I was born. But anyway, so, but when you see people in their 70s and 80s that we know who have come to us in privacy, being able to walk down the street and see themselves represented in this rainbow flag. When you see people who, newly married couples who are just making their lives here, we've just had another baby born to a same-sex couple very recently. So you see those families and they see the flags and they go, I'm included here. And then you see the young kids who are coming up who aren't out yet going, they're here. There are LGBT people here. So across the board, the importance of visibility, of being able to see ourselves represented in our communities is enormous. And it also is all these businesses support and welcome LGBT people. That's restaurants, that's hairdressers, that's coffee shops, that's clothes shops, shoe shops, men's shops, women's shops, ice cream parlors, you name it. They're all saying, your business and you are welcome in our service. And that is phenomenal.
I can reiterate and then endorse what you said, Bernie, because a couple of weeks ago, when I haven't been going into town for a while, I went into town, I was doing an interview with Street 66, and I came out and Dublin's quays were festooned, is the way I would put it, with rainbow colour flags and the LGBTQ flag. And it just meant so much because this is who we are, and it is life affirming. That's all I can say, because I said it to you earlier. I hated Ireland. I left Ireland in 1972. The one time I started to feel some pride about being from here was May the 22nd in 2015, and it was just unbelievable. This is us. This is now. Pride this year, Bernie, it's like Dublin, it's going to be online. Have you got a few events planned?
We had obviously the Proud and Loud, that was a big thing.
Sure.
And tomorrow morning we are launching a video that we made about LGBT people in Loud, and we asked a number of our service users to come and talk about their life experience as being LGBT and Loud across the ages. And so there's a lovely video going out tomorrow morning called Now You See Us. And it is part of our Pride. The Proud and Loud was one part. The video is our second part. And then we are hoping, but it won't happen till August, for our final part this year. And that will also be something big, hopefully. So that one we're keeping on the wraps for another few weeks until we get it off the ground. But the video is on release tomorrow. And what we're really, really hoping is that maybe come the end of the year, we'll be able to have some kind of a public LGBT event, something on the main street or something somewhere that brings us together as a community. Because I think, as you probably know, like we are a community, but at the moment we're very isolated and fractured, as we just can't come together in the numbers that we need to. Sure,
yeah. Where can people get to see the video, Bernie?
Oh, it'll be going live on Outcomers Facebook page tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Then it will go out. You'll get a special version of it tomorrow morning to have a look at, and we'll hope that you'll promote it and everybody else.
We certainly will.
And I think it's lovely because it talks a lot about what you've just said. It talks about the people leaving, where they went, and why they felt Ireland wasn't for them. Right up to the marriage equality referendum, right up to the new families that we're creating now. And so it covers the growth of Ireland in terms of our democracy and how inclusive this is a great wee country. And we have, the LGBT people have made it a wonderful place to be LGBT. All these giants whose shoulders I stand on today, you stand on, the people who stuck it out when it wasn't easy to be here and when it wasn't easy to say you were LGBT and when times were not like they are now. All of those people, every one of them dug one spadeful of earth out of it to make it a place where me and you can be here today doing this. And the next generation are going to do more.
Yeah. Bernie, we've had lots of, if you like, LGBTQ islands in Ireland, but people like ourselves and all those other great activists around the country, we're now starting to build bridges to link all those islands. And I think once we do, the sum of the parts, the totality is going to be much greater than the sum of the parts. So hopefully we'll catch up with you live in Dundalk next year. I'm fully vaccinated and I'm encouraging everybody to do the same so we can all meet up again.
And I'm the same, Mick, and definitely. And you know what? Maybe you'll come down and say hello to us at Pride 2022 in person.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Take the video camera down, take the recording equipment and talk to some of the local people. So Bernie Quinn, you've grown in the last 10 years since I've seen you. Keep up that great work that you're doing and say hello to all the community in Louth on our behalf.
Lovely to see you, Mick. Thanks so much for calling us today.
Take care. Bye-bye.
My world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am.